Okay. So that leaves us with two items in the agenda. 576 LL node current status. It's usually provided by Anton, but is there anybody else who can provide an update on the progress on that?
I didn't touch to the documentation item for a while now. I received a response from Apple support, but I didn't have time to handle it at the moment. So apart from that, nothing on my side.
Okay. Well, was the sole item in the backlog was around documentation update or other outstanding issues reported by users in the LL node?
The issue was just the LL node user journey, how to use it, and nothing related to bugs or. But I think that Anton works on resolving bugs with the other member. I forget the name, Kini or something like that.
Yeah, I think it started out because LL node wasn't working right, and there was discussion on whether it should still be in the user journeys or not. But Anton's been working on it along with somebody else, which I can't remember their name, but they've made progress so that I think it's now working again, maybe with some functionality reduced, but sounds like he's got that going forward, but I don't know anything more than that in terms of the status.
Okay. Fair enough. Probably will know more when he joins us in the next meeting or so.
Yep.
So moving on to the next item, which is 502 user journey tracking documentation. Raphael made an update saying that he opened a PR to migrate the poor performance doc from I guess, Diagnostic internal report to the node.js WG site. I wasn't sure. I asked that question in the PR itself. So just want to know if anybody knows that it's just a migration or other textual changes in the doc that we need to review more in detail. Because the original document, as far as I remember, has been reviewed.
I don't really know. I just take a quick look at the new content, but I can check it now.
Okay, he just explained that it's just a migration. So
yeah, he answered.
It's just like a rubber stamp review. So it has been open for a few days. So everybody please have a look at and provide the review comments. And that is it. Those are the only items in the listed agenda. Anybody else have anything else that we want to discuss?
We could talk about the tracing channel thing. I'm trying to add to diagnostics channel.
Okay.
Just paste the link in here. Just added that to the doc. Yeah, just trying to get more feedback on that and figure out if that's a reasonable direction. Yeah, haven't put together docs for it, just have the code in the test so far. Just want to make sure the direction is reasonable before putting together docs for it.
Could you share the item again in the chat?
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat as well.
Just because I see a lot of PRN content last day from you. Okay. Okay.
But yeah, that's basically for like tracing purposes. We want to have for specific events. There's like synchronous start and end of anything we're interested in. So that gives us like if we want to trace the synchronous time of something, and then there's a separate async end event, so we can know when a callback or then continuation or anything like that is reached. And then there's an error channel if any errors happen. And so we've defined this like consistent model for how any of these errors are produced, or how like any of these channels are produced. And so I've created this like basically helper object to like wrap it all into like one function, basically. Well, it's like three separate functions, but like you call one of them. It's like a sync version, a promise version, and a callback version.
In terms of the naming overload, like tracing versus the other tracing, how, like, is this a higher level, just that start end error, or is that just where you're starting? I'm just trying to understand like the positioning of this tracing versus other tracing, which I think would potentially have a lot more data, right?
So the intent of this is to only handle tracing of like a single operation. So like a single like database query or something like that.
Right.
Would have like a trace around that. We wouldn't do any of the like linking between them. That'd be left up to the like subscriber of these to stuff that data into async local storage and do their own correlation. So all it is just connecting the dots between like, yeah, this thing started and it ended and the callback happened.
Is it like an event trace? Like, I guess just wondering, like, so it's what you described was it traces one specific thing versus a stream of things, right? Or
yeah, so it's basically like 4 events describing that particular action, and it's split across 4 different channels. So there's like when you first call the thing, it'll emit a start event. When it synchronously ends, they'll emit the end event, and that happens like whether it's a async thing or not. It will just always have an end event. And then when the callback is reached, there's an async end, or like if there's a then continuation, it'll trigger that. Like you can know the time, like the synchronous like self time basically that this thing had. You can know the time until it got to the callback, which is like who knows what the process is doing in between that. But yeah, you know that like, yeah, there's this much delay between like initiating the request and it returning. And then there's an error channel that if anything goes wrong synchronously or asynchronously, it'll inform you about any errors.
would this also be like, I'm thinking of like the performance API that lets you do like do some timing. This would be a pre-instrumented versions of, because I don't think we've used that performance API. Like we don't have any pre-existing things instrumented, do we?
Not that I'm aware of. Haven't paid super close attention to that one. But yeah, the intention for this is basically like a diagnostics channel is like meant as just like general data fire hose, and this is just a way to provide a little more structure for the cases where like we specifically know that we want trace data here, so let's just put in this helper that gives us the relevant events that all the APMs have said, like we need these. Yep. And like technically you could create the channels yourself manually and like publish to them manually as well, but we chose to like make a more structured way to do that here.
Right. Yeah. I was just thinking out loud on the related things.
But yeah, like the API is mostly meant to just be like a convenience thing, just bundling everything into one interface just to make it fairly consistent. The one thing about it that is maybe not immediately obvious is the object that gets published on each of these channels is the same object between each of the events. It just adds extra properties to it. So like when a result is available, it adds a result property to it. When an error is available, it adds an error property to it. So you can just like watch that, but like the important bit is that because it's the same object, you can use that in like a weak map or something like that to keep track of like the lifetime of it.
I guess the subscribe and unsubscribe are just convenience methods to subscribe to all of the channels.
Yeah.
Versus
Yeah,
a specific
you
one.
just you just pass in an object with the like named keys of the channels, and yeah, it'll subscribe to each of them or unsubscribe from each of them.
And then the trace sync and trace promise are the ones that like when as you add the instrumentation, you need to add those in places, right?
Yeah, so the idea is, well, like we want to avoid APMs needing to have their own instrumentation. That's kind of the like driving purpose of diagnostics channels. We want a thing in core that we can go to libraries and say like, please add this so that we can have like visibility into what your module is doing. And so like each of these functions are just providing different ways that like if you have a promise returning function, you can just use the trace promise. If you have like a callback receiving function, you can use the trace callback. If you have a thing that's just sync but it's expensive enough that you might actually care about tracing it, then just use trace sync. We'll probably use that one for like template rendering or things like that.
Then it generates the start and end and the four channel events for you.
Yeah. So all they have to do is just do like channel.trace sync, and they can pass in an object if there's like extra stuff that they care about passing along.
Any other discussion point on 44943?
Yeah, there's discussion for that. Yeah, just trying to get a sense if it's reasonable enough that I should put together docs for it and do the finish up to put ready for a proper review.
Yeah.
I don't have any concern or complaints or more questions or anything. Was there any other approach you thought of for this? Like, it seems like pretty obvious, shouldn't say obvious, but it seems like a reasonable fit with what you know, the use case, but I'm wondering if there's any others that you thought were like good contenders or anything like that.
There's lots of different ways that we could structure this, and like there's like we could also just do it in a more loosely structured way. Like we are planning on like Brian English is working on a doc basically describing the like different channel based approach that we've come up with for this. It's like essentially writing a spec for how this works internally. But just, yeah, like writing a doc explaining to the ecosystem, like we need these events and this is why. So this is just like a concrete implementation of that. But yeah, it's possible for people to just like do all of this manually if they wanted to. And yeah, it's like that. I had like some discussions with Mateo, and like his feeling was like he would probably want to just use it, like do it manually, because like each of the trace functions like takes a function to like wrap the events around, which means there's a closure there. So yeah, Mateo likes to avoid closures where possible. So
That wouldn't affect the fact that there's like the 4 channels and the things fed into them. It only affects the helpers that you have there. Is that right? Or is that not right?
Sorry, say that again.
I guess like there's sort of 2 parts to what you've got here. One is like, hey, we're going to structure it so that there's these 4 channels and these events go to these channels. And then the other part is you have some helpers for people to actually generate code that, you know, generate the events that go into those channels. And so my question was like, was the part that Mateo wanted to do on his own, was it just, I don't want to use your helpers, but it would still feed into the same channels and the same structure?
Yeah, so it's, you know, basically he doesn't want to use the trace functions because it takes like it makes an extra closure.
But he's fine with like the channel, the start end and async end and error channels as a structure for how the events flow out.
Yes, it seemed to be as far as we could tell. Yeah, we had a call with him recently, just walking through the like draft state of the doc I mentioned, basically defining the spec for this. And yeah, so it seemed to be in agreement with that. Just yeah, wanted to avoid using the trace functions.
Right. Okay. So yeah, that doesn't sound like it should be a worry if, like, you know, if there's an easy way to do it and a harder way, but it all flows into the same output. Doesn't seem inconsistent.
Yeah, that's the general idea here, is to just like provide a convenient and understandable way, because like a lot of the ecosystem is going to have stuff that will be interesting to trace, but they're not really going to know much about tracing to understand like why do we need to hook into these specific parts, and like if we do any of these in like not quite the right place, it can cause issues, and like that's all the stuff that like we don't want people to have to think about. Just like wrap
Yeah.
a function in this and it'll just work. Yeah, I'll try to get some docs for that put together soon then. And the other thing I'm working on that's kind of connected to that, it's using that API, is making integration between Diagnostics channel and async local storage. I just paste the link in the chat. That's but basically makes async local storage binds like it binds its data, so like it does a run based on the data that's published to the channel. And like you can give it a basically a transform function saying like for this storage, like I want to subscribe to this channel and like run this basically builder function that receives the data and then like transforms that in some way to what I want this to be as the state of the store whenever this channel runs. Which it like essentially what that lets you do is like say like whenever this whenever the start for this tracing channel happens, I want you to like create a new span or something like that, so you can just do like a return new span, and that will just set that as like that new span as the current thing in the store. And that one depends on the changes from the tracing channel, so it includes all of that. You can just kind of skip over that commit and look at the other stuff.
So your plan will be to just merge the first one and then continue to work on the second one?
Yeah.
Okay,
just
I will give a new review for the first one. But, yeah. And just a question, because you talk about your discussion with Matteo about wrapping function, and what is the cost of not wrapping a function is to just, I mean, what could be the other solution? Call it manually, I would say, maybe.
Yeah, the other solution, like either you can like publish to the like individual channels directly, so like do that manually, or we can just wrap all of this up into these helpers. So yeah, but like there's enough complexity that's like wrapping it into the helpers is helpful, just to make sure we're like consistent about how it's being done, and yeah, just preventing the user from doing anything wrong. Like like we've seen before with like domains and the enter and exit thing, people will do it wrong constantly. So
and you could have memory leaks or kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I definitely agree on that, and for me it's good. I would just give it the last review, but yeah, at least for the first one, I didn't dig too much into the second one because regarding the time I get, there are too much comments and a lot of discussion already. So I think that it could be better to not hide over noise. But yeah, I would give a look to at least to the 44943.
Yeah, I'll try to get some proper documentation written out for it, like today or tomorrow or something, so it's like actually ready for proper
Yeah,
review.
I will wait for that. So, okay.
Okay.
Thanks for that. Amazing job, and not easy to just convince everybody, and it's not, yeah, really trivial. So yeah, thanks for that.
Okay.
Thanks, Stephen.
Yeah.
Anything else on this?
No. All my other Node core stuff is, yeah, either just ready for review, or there's another thing I need to get back to someday, but it'll be a while. I have an idea for how to do async local storage without async hooks, like not using it internally. But that, yeah, it'll take some work, and I need to get back to that someday.
Okay.
I guess, yeah.
All right. So that's all what we want to discuss today. Anything else before we close the meeting?
Nope.
Okay, then thanks everybody for joining, and we'll meet in 2 weeks' time. Have a good day.
See you there. Bye bye.